Sharon Osbourne's story did not begin in the shadow of Ozzy Osbourne, nor did it end with his death. Long before the world knew her as the sharp-tongued television personality or the fiercely loyal wife of heavy metal's most infamous icon, Sharon was a survivor in her own right. Born into the chaotic world of music management, she grew up witnessing both the glamour and the cruelty of the entertainment industry. Her father, Don Arden, was one of the most powerful and feared managers in rock history, a man whose influence shaped bands, careers, and reputations. But behind that power was instability, conflict, and emotional damage that would leave deep marks on Sharon's early life. From a young age, Sharon learned that love in the music business often came with conditions. Trust was fragile, loyalty was tested, and success could disappear overnight. Her relationship with her father was turbulent, marked by control, betrayal, and eventual estrangement. These early wounds shaped Sharon into someone fiercely independent but emotionally guarded, a woman who learned to fight before she learned to heal. This background is critical to understanding why Sharon later bonded so deeply with Ozzy Osbourne. Their connection was not just romantic, it was rooted in shared damage, shared chaos, and shared survival. When Sharon met Ozzy, he was already famous, already broken, and already spiraling. Black Sabbath had made him a global name, but addiction and self-destruction threatened to erase everything he had built. Ozzy was unreliable, vulnerable, and dangerously unstable. Many people saw him as a lost cause. Sharon saw something else entirely. She saw potential, pain, and a man who needed structure as much as he needed love. Stepping into the role of both partner and manager, Sharon took control of a situation that few others could handle. It was not glamorous, it was exhausting, frightening, and often humiliating. Their early years together were defined by constant crisis. Ozzy's addictions dominated their lives, bringing hospitalizations, relapses, and near-death experiences. Sharon became the anchor in a storm that never fully passed. She managed tours, negotiated contracts, and rebuilt Ozzy's solo career while simultaneously trying to keep him alive. The world saw outrageous headlines and shocking behavior. What they did not see was Sharon sleeping with one eye open, waiting for the next phone call that could change everything. Despite the chaos, Sharon's efforts transformed Ozzy's career. Under her management, he became more successful than ever before. Albums sold in the millions, tours filled stadiums, and Ozzy's image evolved from troubled band member to solo legend. Sharon was not just standing beside him, she was actively shaping his legacy. This dynamic, however, came at a cost. Sharon's identity became deeply intertwined with Ozzy's survival. Her purpose was no longer separate, it was fused to his existence. As the years passed, their relationship weathered infidelity, public scandals, and emotional breakdowns. There were moments when it seemed impossible for them to continue together. Sharon herself admitted to reaching breaking points where walking away felt like the only option. Yet time and again she stayed, not because it was easy, but because walking away would have meant losing the life she had built around saving someone else. Their marriage became one of rock history's most complicated partnerships, built on love but reinforced by dependency and endurance. The public perception of Sharon began to shift in the early 2000s when reality television pulled back the curtain on their private world. The Osbournes introduced Sharon as more than a manager or a wife. Audiences saw her humor, her sharp intelligence, and her vulnerability. For the first time, Sharon existed in the public eye as an individual, not just as Ozzy's protector. This visibility brought new opportunities, but it also added pressure. Every family conflict, every health scare, and every emotional breakdown became entertainment. Behind the scenes, Sharon's health battles began to surface. Her fight with cancer was one of the most defining chapters of her life. Facing mortality forced her to confront fears she had long buried beneath responsibility and control. Ozzy, once the one being cared for, had to become the caregiver. This role reversal exposed cracks in both of them. Sharon survived cancer, but the experience changed her. It stripped away illusions of invincibility and reminded her that time was no longer endless. As Ozzy aged, his health declined rapidly. Parkinson's disease, spinal injuries, and repeated surgeries left him physically weakened and emotionally drained. The man who once commanded stages with raw energy now struggled with basic movement. Sharon returned to her familiar role as protector, advocate, and organizer. She defended Ozzy publicly, managed his appearances, and shielded him from criticism. But privately, the toll was immense. Watching the person you love fade piece by piece is a unique form of grief that begins long before death arrives. When Ozzy passed away in July 2025, the world mourned the loss of a legend. Fans gathered in thousands, sharing memories, music, and gratitude. Tributes poured in from across the globe. The funeral was both grand and devastating, a final celebration of a life that had defined an era. But for Sharon, the spectacle meant little compared to the silence that followed. For the first time in decades, there was no crisis to manage, no schedule to protect, no life to hold together. The role that had defined her existence was suddenly gone. This is where Sharon Osbourne's true tragedy begins, not in public tears or headlines, but in the quiet aftermath. The absence of Ozzy is not just emotional, it is structural. Her days, once shaped around his needs, now stretch empty. The woman who spent her life keeping someone else alive must now learn how to exist without that purpose. Grief in her case is not loud, it is heavy, slow, and isolating. At 72, Sharon faces a reality few talk about openly. When your identity is built around partnership, loss doesn't just break your heart, it dismantles who you are. The world continues to see Sharon as strong, sharp, and unbreakable, but strength does not cancel grief, it only hides it better. Behind closed doors, Sharon must confront memories, regrets, and the frightening question of what comes next. This is not just the story of a widow, it is the story of a woman who spent her life saving someone else and now must save herself. And that journey, far from being over, may be the hardest chapter she has ever faced. After the funeral ended and the crowd slowly disappeared, Sharon Osbourne was left alone with a reality she had not truly prepared for. For decades, her life had been built around managing chaos, solving crises, and protecting a man who constantly lived on the edge. Now, the edge was gone, and so was the chaos. What remained was stillness, and for someone like Sharon, stillness was terrifying. Grief did not arrive all at once, it came in waves, triggered by ordinary moments, an empty chair, a silent room, a routine that no longer had a purpose. Publicly, Sharon maintained composure. She thanked fans, acknowledged tributes, and honored Ozzy's legacy with dignity. But grief is rarely honest in public spaces. Behind closed doors, the loss became more complicated. Sharon was not only mourning her husband, she was mourning the life structure that had defined her for more than 40 years. Ozzy had been her responsibility, her mission, and in many ways, her identity. Without him, she was forced to confront a version of herself that had been neglected for decades. One of the hardest truths Sharon had to face was that her strength had always been reactive. She thrived in survival mode. Addiction, illness, scandals, and public scrutiny gave her something to fight against. Now, there was no enemy, no emergency, no immediate danger. Psychologically, this shift can be devastating. Many caregivers experience a delayed collapse after the person they cared for passes away. The adrenaline fades and unresolved emotions rise to the surface. Sharon was no exception. Her relationship with fame further complicated her grief. Sharon had spent years balancing authenticity with performance. Television taught her how to be sharp, entertaining, and controlled. But grief does not follow scripts. Every public appearance risked becoming a moment of exposure.